Hey everyone, welcome back. Do me a favor right now, just take a deep breath with me. Let all the noise and the crazy rush of the day just kind of fade away for a second. Today, we are going to completely immerse ourselves in an explainer that dives so incredibly deep into the very heart of the Gospel of John. We're going to be living in chapter 2 today. And look, we aren't just looking at historical events or brushing up on some ancient trivia. No, we are stepping into a profound, carefully curated gallery of divine signs. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the people back then. In the first century world of Judea, you're looking at a place under heavy Roman occupation. People are burdened by these incredibly strict, heavy religious laws, and honestly, they were just desperate. Desperate for a real sign of true liberation. And in John's account, a miracle is never, ever just a magic trick meant to wow a crowd. It's a vital signpost. It's pointing to a massive underlying reality about exactly who Jesus is and how he completely, from the ground up, transforms our world. We are going to witness a truly fascinating journey today. It starts with this quiet, almost hidden little miracle at a joyous wedding gathering, and it's going to end with a thunderous, highly public confrontation in literally the most sacred space on earth. This is the story of how the old, exhausted ways of human striving are completely overhauled by divine grace. This is Water Becomes Wine. Let's get into it.
They have no wine. I just want to let that sentence hang in the air for a moment. They have no wine. To really feel the weight of this, we need to understand the cultural flesh and blood of the ancient Near East. Because in first century Galilee, right, a wedding feast wasn't just a brief afternoon reception where you grab a slice of cake and go home. No way. It was a days-long celebration. It was about life, community, and joy, and it involved literally the entire village. And wine? Wine was the absolute, undeniable symbol of that joy. Historically speaking, the host was legally and socially bound to provide adequately for their guests. So running out of wine wasn't merely a catering glitch. It wasn't like, oh, oops, we forgot to buy extra soda. It was a catastrophic social failure. In fact, failing to provide enough wine could actually lead to a real lawsuit from the bride's family. I mean, think about that. It meant profound shame, social ruin, the kind of embarrassment that would follow this young couple for decades. It's a disaster. But John is inviting us to see something so much deeper here. This sudden, embarrassing lack at a joyous wedding, it represents us. It represents our own profound spiritual exhaustion. We are moving deliberately into the moment when our human resources hit absolute rock bottom. And let's be honest, it's a place we all visit, right? It's that moment when our personal willpower and our exhausted human striving can no longer mask the deep emptiness we feel inside.
Part 1. Lack, the wine ran out. I really want you to picture this scene vividly in your mind's eye. The music is still playing, the guests are out there laughing, completely unaware of the impending disaster. But behind the scenes, back in the kitchen, the joy of the feast has come to a sudden, screeching halt. The panic is setting in, and what is left in the background? The stark reality of 6 stone water jars. Now, don't picture delicate little glass wine decanters here. These things were massive. They were rough, incredibly heavy stone pots, literally carved out of solid rock. Why stone? Because stone, unlike clay, couldn't become ritually impure under Jewish law. Each one of these massive things held 20 to 30 gallons of water. And crucially, they were meant for the strict Jewish rituals of purification. You would use this water to rigorously wash your hands, to wash the outside of your cup, basically to fulfill the old, rigid requirements of the law. So what do they represent? They represent a system of external cleansing that was hard, it was immovable, it was cold, and ultimately, it was totally incapable of providing the warm inner joy of true, lasting satisfaction. And right now, in the middle of this crisis, even they are completely empty.
Okay, let's really dive into this contrast because I'm telling you it is the pivot point of the entire narrative here. On one side, we have the absolute, complete exhaustion of human resources and the heavy burden of old, dry traditions. And that is represented so perfectly by those heavy, empty stone jars, just cold, rigid, and totally tapped out. On the other side, we have the impending, silent arrival of unmerited divine grace. And the beautiful hidden truth here, and this is so relevant for us today, is that God's greatest work in our lives rarely begins when our cups are full and we feel entirely self-sufficient. Actually, scratch that, it almost never starts there. It is precisely when our human ability ends, when our personal wine runs out, and we are left with nothing but cold, empty stone, that the space for a real, divine miracle truly begins. Having confronted the stark reality of our emptiness, prepare yourself for a monumental shift here. We are moving from a state of total depletion to a revelation of overwhelming, unimaginable spiritual abundance.
Part 2. New wine, abundant grace.
Imagine the intense human dynamic playing out here. Mary, the mother of Jesus, sees the impending social ruin of her friends. She leans in, likely whispering, bringing this desperate situation directly to him. And she's probably expecting a quick fix, right? Like, son, do something. But his response seems entirely unexpected. He looks at her and says, "My time has not yet come." Honestly, it sounds almost cold, doesn't it? A bit distant, like he's brushing her off. But we absolutely must let this statement echo in our minds to truly grasp its weight. Jesus is not being dismissive of his mother. He is revealing something incredibly profound about his identity. He is demonstrating that he is not governed by human urgency. He's not swayed by the threat of social embarrassment or our panicked timelines. He doesn't act simply to please the crowds or even to appease his own earthly mother. His actions are tied to a much, much higher unseen reality. And this brings us to a deeply theological concept that is absolutely crucial to understand: orchestration. God is not merely reacting to a catering emergency in Cana. He is operating on a divine timetable. Every single move Jesus makes is a careful arrangement of events that supersedes human expectations and demands. The concept of his hour is this massive underlying theme that runs throughout the entire Gospel of John. Whenever he speaks of his time or his hour, he is pointing far, far beyond this wedding in Galilee. He is setting up a much larger ultimate hour of salvation, the hour of his suffering, his death, and his resurrection, where the ultimate wine of his blood will be poured out for the whole world. So he isn't just acting as a magical caterer here. He is literally orchestrating history itself. Look at how this divine orchestration actually plays out in our own lives, because it follows a pattern. First, it requires the end of human resources. The wine absolutely must run out. We have to reach the end of ourselves and our own clever solutions. Second, it requires complete submission. Look at Mary's remarkable response to the servants. Despite Jesus' seemingly vague, maybe even unhelpful answer, she turns to them and says, "Do whatever he tells you." What radical trust. I mean, this is the ultimate blueprint for our own submission in times of deep emptiness. It requires us to act in faith even when we literally do not see the solution. And third, when they follow that command and fill those massive jars to the brim with just ordinary plain water, the unseen divine transformation occurs. Faith meets grace, and the miracle is born right there in the quiet spaces of obedience. Now look at the breathtaking qualitative shift that happens next. When the master of the banquet tastes the water that had been drawn, it isn't just passable wine. It's not the cheap stuff you bring out when everyone's already had a few glasses. It is the absolute best wine. Rich, perfectly aged, created out of thin air. Jesus doesn't just replace the old broken system, he completely overhauls it. He takes the mundane water meant for cold, strict ritual purification and he transforms it into the rich, extravagant new wine of grace. He takes our mere survival and turns it into a vibrant, abundant new covenant. This is the first great sign. The Messiah has arrived, and he brings an unmerited joy that the old religious laws could never, ever produce. But as soon as we grasp the quiet, intimate grace of Cana, the narrative abruptly shifts gears. We are violently pulled from a joyful, private wedding feast in a small Galilean village and dropped directly into a chaotic, loud, and incredibly public scene in the bustling heart of Jerusalem during the Passover. The atmosphere completely changes.
Part 3. Noise, the fallen temple. I want you to close your eyes for a second and just paint a vivid, noisy auditory picture of the temple courtyard. This is supposed to be the dwelling place of God on earth, right? The ultimate place of peace. But historically, what was actually happening here was known as the Bazaars of Annas. which was run by a highly corrupt high priesthood. So instead of the sacred quiet of prayer, your ears are just assaulted. The pungent, overwhelming smell of animal manure fills the air. You hear the deafening bleating of thousands of sheep, the heavy lowing of oxen, and the aggressive shouting of merchants hawking their wares. And underneath all of that, a constant, sharp, metallic clinking of coins. You see, the priests held an absolute monopoly here. They would routinely reject the animals that worshippers brought all the way from home, forcing these poor people to buy approved sacrifices right there at exorbitant markups. And the money changers? They charged massive predatory fees to exchange foreign currency for the required half-shekel temple tax. It is a tragedy of the highest order. The most sacred inner sanctuary has been aggressively reduced to a corrupt, transactional marketplace fueled entirely by greed. Into this deafening, corrupt chaos steps Jesus, and his reaction is explosive. He gathers up these cords, physically fashioning them into a whip, and he drives the animals out. Just imagine the scene. Tables are violently overturned, heavy coins go cascading and spinning across the stone floor. Merchants are sent scrambling in sheer panic. And with a measured, righteous intensity, he declares, "Make not my Father's house an house of merchandise." This is the zeal for God's house that entirely consumes him. It is a fiery, uncompromising demand for purity. He is looking right at a religious system that has learned how to ruthlessly profit off the faithful, and he is literally tearing it down to the ground. So, the absolutely crucial point here is understanding what is actually driving this aggressive cleansing. This isn't mere human anger. Human anger is erratic, it's out of control, it's selfish. No, this is a powerful, undeniable display of divine sovereignty. It is a highly focused, righteous reclamation. Sovereignty is the absolute right and authority of Christ to judge, to cleanse, and to reclaim the purity of worship. Think about it. If the miracle at Cana showed his power over our internal lack, the cleansing of the temple shows his absolute authority over our external worship. He is completely unwilling to let our approach to God remain contaminated by greed, empty formalism, or transactional bargaining. He demands, and he creates, a pure space. Naturally, the shock of this violent event leaves the religious leaders demanding an explanation. They want a sign to prove his authority. And this leads us to our next major transition.
Part 4. New Temple True Worship.
When challenged for a sign, Jesus looks right at the religious elite and says something that absolutely baffles them. He says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The crowds and the leaders are deeply, deeply confused. And historically, we can totally understand why. They are looking around at Herod's temple, a massive, sprawling architectural wonder that had been under construction for 46 years. I mean, some of the foundation stones weighed hundreds of tons. The very idea of it being destroyed and rebuilt in 3 days sounded like absolute, utter lunacy. They are thinking entirely about the literal, physical stone building, but Jesus is slowly unraveling a true, shocking meaning that goes far, far beyond architecture. What he's doing here is employing a masterstroke of narrative, foreshadowing. He is giving a profound, heavily veiled hint pointing directly toward the ultimate sacrifice on the cross and his impending resurrection. The physical cleansing of the courtyard, that was just a shadow. The very authority he uses to fashion a whip and cleanse the physical temple is the exact same divine authority that will cleanse the entire cosmos and conquer death itself. He is telling them in a deeply veiled way that the ultimate sign of his authority won't be some flashy magic trick in the sky. It's going to be the empty tomb. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate paradigm shift of the entire Christian faith. It compares a physical, corruptible marketplace made of stone, a place that can be ruined by greed and, historically, as we know, would soon be completely destroyed by Roman armies in 70 AD. It compares that with the resurrected, indestructible body of Christ. John makes it emphatically clear for us. Jesus was speaking of the temple of his body, the center of our spiritual life, the literal place where God and humanity meet, permanently shifts from a geographical location in Jerusalem to the living, breathing person of Jesus himself. That is a game changer.
What this is a massive declaration of redemption. True worship is no longer bound by stone walls. It's not limited by geographic borders, and it certainly isn't controlled by corrupt religious systems. It is firmly rooted in the ultimate act of redemption, the cross.
Through his broken and resurrected body, a permanent, pure, and completely indestructible connection between God and humanity is established. He is the new temple. Where he is, God is. And through him, you and I have direct, untainted access to the Father wherever we are. No middlemen required. So we've seen the new wine of grace, and we've seen the new temple of his body. Now we enter the final, deeply introspective section of our explanator.
Part 5. New Life, Soul's Insight.
As chapter 2 finally comes to a close, we read that while Jesus was in Jerusalem for the Passover, many saw the miraculous signs he was doing and believed in his name. Sounds great, right? But there is a cautious, almost haunting warning here. Let's slow down and really consider this. The text says Jesus did not entrust himself to them. He saw right past their superficial excitement. There is a profound danger, even for us today, in only wanting Jesus for the spectacle. We want the emotional highs. We want the quick fixes to our problems. We absolutely love the miracles, but we often balk at the submission required for a true, transformative relationship with him as Lord.
He knew what was in man. Let's just pause and let that linger for a moment. Jesus is not impressed by crowd sizes. He's not swayed by momentary religious fervor. He doesn't need our outward, polished religious performances to tell him who we are. Christ sees the stark, unvarnished reality of our inner temple. He sees our own internal transactional tables. He sees the greed, the fear, the intense desire for control, and the clever ways we try to bargain with God. He looks right through the applause and examines the absolute true state of our hearts.
Because he knows exactly what is in us, Jesus often invites us into the wilderness. The wilderness is a spiritual state of stripping away. Connect this deeply back to the jars at Cana for a second. The wilderness is the place where our own wine finally runs out. It's where the tables of our self-reliance are forcefully overturned. It is the necessary, sometimes painful space where we must learn complete trust and submission over our fierce desire for control. Just as those empty jars were absolutely required for the miracle of the new wine, our wilderness experiences are entirely necessary. They happen so that our faith rests entirely on the solid rock of Christ, and not just on the fleeting sensory thrills of miracles and easy blessings. When we look back at the journey we've taken today, a really profound threefold arc emerges. We saw the new wine of abundant grace entirely replacing the heavy, cold burden of religious duty. We saw the new temple of his indestructible, resurrected body completely replacing a corrupt physical marketplace. But all of this, all of it, culminates in the complete transformation of our inner life. The ultimate call of John chapter 2 is to move from being mere spectators, people just marveling from a distance at the miracles, to becoming devoted followers deeply committed to an inner, radical renewal of our own hearts. As we conclude our explainer today, I want to leave you with this final, piercing thought to take with you. I want you to look honestly at your own spiritual journey. Is our faith stuck in the superficial, sensory awe of the miraculous? Are we just treating God like a cosmic vending machine for our lack, or a marketplace for our desires? Or are we finally ready to let him overturn our tables, to let him completely empty our old stone jars and lead us into the radical commitment of true, lasting inner renewal? The Master has prepared the absolute best wine, but it's only for those willing to empty themselves first. Thank you so much for diving deep with me today. It's been incredible. Until next time, keep seeking the profound truths beneath the surface. Take care.